I am a longtime church member, and today is our lay-led service for those of you who are visiting us. Once a month, our pastor has a day off on Sunday, so our worshipers or our congregation members volunteer to lead the service. So bear with me. I've done it a couple times, but it's not an easy thing to do. And so just a little bit about the service today. Well, today is actually National Women's Day. So kudos to all you wonderful women who are here today. Glad you're here. And so our service will revolve a little bit around that. You'll see some things kind of woven in here and there. One of the things that I wanted just to point out during our litany of Thanksgiving, we will be honoring some, you probably don't recognize their names, I didn't, some women who were instrumental during the Reformation. So they were there with Martin Luther. I think one of them is Martin Luther's wife, and they helped to form the Lutheran Church. So last week, the first Sunday in March, the ELCA, which is the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, which is what our church is part of, celebrates Bold Women's Day. And so we missed that one last week, but we're kind of combining that this week. And I just wanted to read what their kind of statement was on their website, and it says, Bold Women's Day, celebrated the first Sunday of March, celebrates all Lutheran women who have acted or are acting boldly on their faith in Jesus Christ. Some women are bold in their unceasing prayers. Other women are bold in their service to those in need. Still other women are bold in their advocacy through their hospitality. Whether we live out our bold story of faith in the workplace, family, home, or community, our faith compels us to make a difference in the lives of others. It is all about living out our baptismal call, about being a Christ of disciple. Are you bold? So I thought that was really nice, and we'll talk a little bit more about being bold a little later, sort of. Okay, so just a couple of announcements. Next Sunday, the 15th, we will have our monthly Bible study on women in the Bible. But it's not just for women, but it's just on women. So you're more than welcome to join us after church. And next week, it's going to be Emily and Philip who are leading the discussion. And they're going to be talking about Miriam and Miriam's mother, Jophar, and the women who helped to kind of raise Moses during that time. So that'll be interesting. That those women, we don't really hear too much about them, so it'll be a good discussion. Are there any other announcements? I know, Sally, you had one.
It is the season of Lent, and we're having our Wednesday evening Lenten services. We're not having a soup salad supper each Wednesday during Lent because we decided this year we were going to do it once a month and just sort of spread it out over the year. But we do have one this coming Wednesday. March 11th at 6:15, we'll have our soup salad supper. Emily and Bert will be bringing soups. Yay! Yay! At 7, we'll have our small catechism study, and then renewing our faith. I forget the exact terms that Pastor Rick used for that, but reacquainting ourselves with our Lutheran beliefs. And after that, choir practice for those that are interested. So I hope we see you. Bye. I just want to give you lots of lead time on this. At the end of the month, on the 28th, Saturday, we will be holding an electronics recycling. So there will be flyers over the next couple of weeks for you to take home and share with your neighbors because we'd like a lot of people to come through. And we're also using this as a fundraiser for our flagpole. So I will need volunteers to come help out. I'll be contacting you, or contact me better. That's better.
That's a doozy of a passage. There's a lot in there. I'm not going to go over everything that's in there. I just picked out a few things that I thought stood out to me. When Stephanie first asked me to be the lay leader several months ago, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to change things up, and I'm going to do what I'm teaching in Sunday school. I'm going to talk about women in the Bible. We're doing it in Bible study. I'm going to change things up. I'm going to have the kids involved. And then it got closer and closer, and then I finally figured out which week that I had to do. I'm like, oh, that's not going to happen. But when I did finally read the passage on Wednesday, I finally read it. I was very surprised and happy to see that it was actually about a woman in the Bible. So I don't know if that's a God thing or not, but I'm going to call it a God thing because that's what I wanted to do and that's what I got. So I'm super happy about that. I hadn't studied this passage yet. This is coming up in a few months. We're going to study the woman at the well a little bit closer, but maybe this will be a teaser for you guys to come to that one. Again, there is so much going on in this story. One website that I looked at likened this passage to making a bed. First you start by putting down a sheet, and then you put down a thin blanket, and then another blanket, and then a comforter, and then a throw blanket, and maybe a pillow or two, right? So there's lots and lots of layers, sort of like an onion also, that this story has. And it's a beautiful passage, and I think it's now my favorite story in the Bible because it's just was so lovely. And when you research it and dig deeper into it, you just realize how great it is. So I encourage you to read more about it after I finish. And of course, I'm already off my script, so I don't know where I am. Hold on a second. Okay, so we'll start with the story. So it starts off at a well. Jesus is traveling from Judea, and he's going to Galilee. I think last week you guys talked about Nicodemus, and he's coming from talking with Nicodemus and going to Galilee. And I guess in order to get there, normally people would go around Samaria, but Jesus said, nope, I'm going right through. It was the shorter route, and he wanted to go there, and which was sort of unheard of in those days because Jewish people and Samaritans did not get along. Jews looked down on Samaritans a little bit, so that in and of itself was a little bit scandalous. And he did it anyway. Jesus was there at midday. He was thirsty and hot. You can imagine in the desert. You need to rest. So he goes there and he sees a woman there. And the time of day, when I researched this a little bit, the time of day was really important here because it tells a lot about this woman. Most women didn't go to the well in the middle of the day. They would go in the morning when it was cooler or in the evening. And the well time was much like today's water cooler or coffee cart days where you would go and you would socialize. So women did that, and so this woman was there alone and in the middle of the day, and so that tells us that she was probably an outcast, and maybe she didn't have very many friends, and so would go there when nobody else was around. So she arrives with her empty water jugs, and Jesus approaches her, which is another thing that was sort of taboo. Men didn't go and talk to strange women alone. And then later we discover that not only, so this lady kind of had a past, right? We hear later that she has been married 5 times and that she was now with a man who was not her husband. And so that's sort of scandalous. This is, again, I talked about housewives of the Old Testament, but this is the housewife of the New Testament, right? Scandal, right? So maybe those are some of the reasons why she was there alone. Maybe she was ostracized by her peers for some of her poor decisions that maybe she had made. We don't really know exactly what those are, but all right. So Jesus is sitting with this woman who has a bit of a past. He knew it. He went there to her on purpose to offer his unconditional grace. It is a meeting between Jesus and a woman who carried social stigma, ethnic division, and personal brokenness. Yet it is a moment where Jesus breaks every boundary to reveal the true heart of God. This reminds me of one of my favorite quotes that I heard several years ago when I was at the youth gathering with the teens and we went to Houston. It was during the mass gathering where all these kids are gathered we were in not the Superdome, wherever the big football stadium is in Houston. And there was one of the guest speakers was a pastor, a young pastor, and he was discussing his teenage years that were plagued with shame and guilt, which resulted in his developing an eating disorder. And he struggled with this for a long time and was talking to one of his Lutheran pastors, and the pastor said to him, why do you have all this guilt? Why do you have all this built up shame? He said, there is grace for that. There is God's grace for that. You don't have to worry about anything else. God gives you grace for even if you've done anything wrong, and the same grace, and this is the same grace that Martin Luther found and weaved into all of Lutheran theology. That grace alone, Christ's initiative toward the sinner, and the transformation that flows not from our worthiness or anything that we can do on our own, but solely from God's mercy and grace. So there is grace for that. So I hope you guys use that term because it's my favorite. Another theme that I noticed in this passage is that Christ seeks out the sinner. The Samaritan woman didn't go looking for Jesus. He sought her out. He traveled into her town and went to her well when he knew that she was going to be there. He's making the first move here. And this can remind us that even if we aren't looking for, or even if we fall away from our faith, that Jesus will always be there and he'll be ready for us to come back. The woman at the well went there with her empty water jugs, which can symbolize our inability to draw what we truly need from the world. But like Jesus states in the passage, he offers us living water that can refresh us and satisfy us and can keep us full. Like grace, this is not earned or deserved. Jesus alone can satisfy our spiritual thirst and fill a void in our lives that's otherwise empty. Jesus tells her, the Father seeks worshipers who worship in spirit and truth. True worship is not about the biggest building or the best rituals or that being the most pious, but rather it's about the hearts and minds opened by grace, filled with the Spirit, and anchored in the truth of Christ. Worship becomes not a location, but a relationship, one that begins at the well in a moment of unexpected mercy. The woman comes to the well holding burdens of her past and the weight of societal judgment that's been placed on her. Yet Jesus approaches her and speaks to her with dignity and respect. He calls out her truths, not to condemn her or to put her to shame, but rather to free her from all of those burdens that she is holding on to. Jesus showed her amazing grace by breaking down barriers. He crossed a cultural barrier, he crossed a gender barrier, he crossed a religious barrier, and he crossed a moral barrier. This time, he's not knocking over tables or speaking in parables. He is simply speaking with a woman at a well. This passage demonstrates how women can be, this passage also demonstrates how women can be the bearer of the gospel and spread the good news to others. After meeting Jesus, women leaves her jar behind as if she's abandoning the old vessels of shame and brokenness, and she immediately goes to a town and becomes a witness, telling her community to come and see a man who told me everything I did. Today, we celebrate National Women's Day, and last week we celebrated the ELCA's Bold Women Day. This passage is quite fitting as it reminds us that Christ consistently sees, honors, and lifts women. Not just those who are marginalized by society, but all women. Jesus spoke directly and respectfully with this woman in a culture that devalued her. And he trusted her so much, he revealed to her his identity as being the Messiah. And that's something that he hasn't done yet, or very much yet to this point in the Bible. This is a beautiful parallel to the lives of women throughout history who have carried the gospel into homes and communities and schools and congregations and very often quietly and without recognition. National Women's Day gives our church an opportunity to honor the gifts of women, celebrate their leadership, acknowledge the burdens they've carried throughout the years, repent where the church has failed to value them, affirm that God continues to speak and work through them. To the women who carry unseen burdens, Christ sees you. To those who feel defined by past mistakes, Christ redeems you. To those voices who have been ignored, Christ listens and speaks with you. And to those who tirelessly serve in church, family, or community, Christ strengthens you. The Samaritan woman reminds us that Christ's grace reaches where human judgment cannot. She reminds us that God delights in raising up the overlooked and underserved. And she shows us that when Jesus meets us at our well, our place of need, he transforms us into bearers of his good news. The living water Jesus offers is not a one-time gift. It is a continual spring, sustaining us in dryness, disappointment, and struggle. On this National Women's Day, may we honor the women who Jesus honors, listen to the voices he listens to, and celebrate the living water he pours out freely on us. Amen.